Why is it that so many men find themselves constantly explaining, justifying, and defending their decisions to the women in their lives? You know the pattern, you make a choice, she questions it, and suddenly you're launching into a detailed explanation of your reasoning, your motives, your thought process, as if you're on trial and fighting for your freedom. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself mid-sentence, realizing you've been talking for 5 minutes straight, trying to convince her that your decision makes sense? And how many times has that explanation actually worked the way you hoped it would? The truth is uncomfortable, but liberating. All that explaining isn't bringing you closer to understanding. It's undermining your position and creating a dynamic that leaves both of you frustrated and disconnected. When you explain yourself excessively, you're unconsciously sending a powerful message that your decisions require her approval to be valid. You're positioning yourself as someone who needs permission rather than someone who makes choices with confidence. And here's the painful irony. The more you explain, the less she respects the decision, and the more she'll continue to question your judgment in the future. We've been conditioned to believe that communication means explaining everything, that if we just find the right words, the perfect argument, then finally we'll be understood, and our choices will be respected. But this approach fundamentally misunderstands what's actually happening in these interactions. This isn't about logic, it's about something much deeper. When she questions your decision, she's rarely looking for a detailed explanation of your thought process. What she's actually seeking is reassurance that you're capable of making sound decisions that consider both your needs and hers. She's looking for confidence, not a committee meeting. The problem begins early in our development as men. Many of us were raised to believe that we needed to justify our choices to authority figures, parents, teachers, bosses. We internalize the idea that our decisions are only valid if they can be defended with airtight reasoning. And we bring this pattern into our relationships, not realizing that we're recreating a parent-child dynamic rather than fostering a relationship between equals. Let me ask you this. Do you notice how the most respected men in your life rarely launch into long explanations of their choices? They make decisions, communicate them clearly, and move forward with conviction. They don't feel the need to convince everyone around them that they're right. There's a quiet confidence there, a security in their own judgment that doesn't require external validation. That's what she's actually responding to when she falls in line, as our title suggests. Not domination or control, but the relief of being with a man who knows his own mind and doesn't need constant reassurance that his thinking is sound. So what's the solution? If explaining yourself is the problem, what's the alternative? First, we need to recognize that over-explaining comes from insecurity. When you're secure in your decision, you don't feel the compulsive need to justify it. This insecurity might stem from past criticism, from fear of conflict, or from a deeper worry that your judgment isn't trustworthy. Acknowledging this is the first step toward changing the pattern. Second, we need to reframe what these interactions are really about. When she questions your decision, she's not necessarily challenging your authority, she's testing your conviction. Can you stand firmly in your choice without becoming defensive or collapsing into endless justification? That's what she's really wanting to know. The solution isn't to stop communicating, it's to communicate differently. Instead of explaining, try stating your decision clearly and confidently, acknowledging her perspective, and then holding steady in your position without becoming defensive. Here's what this looks like in practice. Instead of, I decided we should invest in this property because I did extensive research on the neighborhood. Growth rates and property values have increased by 15% over the last 3 years. Plus, I talked to 4 different real estate experts who all agreed that. Try. I've decided this investment makes sense for us. I've done my research and I'm confident it's the right move. I understand you have concerns and I'm happy to hear them, but this is the direction we're going. Notice the difference. The first response is seeking approval. The second is providing leadership. When you stop over-explaining, something powerful happens. The dynamic of your relationship begins to shift. Rather than positioning yourself as someone who needs her permission, you establish yourself as someone who considers her input but ultimately trusts your own judgment. And here's the surprising truth many men miss. Most women don't actually want a partner who needs their approval for every decision. They want someone who can be a true partner, someone who can take the lead when appropriate, who can make decisions with confidence, and who doesn't crumble under questioning. This isn't about being domineering or dismissive of her thoughts and feelings. It's about finding the balance between considering her perspective and maintaining your sovereignty as an individual with your own mind and judgment. It's about being strong enough to hear her concerns without feeling the need to defend yourself against them. Think of it this way. When you over-explain, you're treating her questions as accusations that you need to defend against. But what if her questions aren't accusations at all? What if they're simply her way of understanding your thinking and feeling included in the process? When you respond with brief, confident answers rather than lengthy explanations, you communicate that you're not threatened by her questions. You're secure enough in your decision that you don't need to convince her or yourself that you're right. Here's another example. She asks, "Why did you decide to take that job without discussing it with me first?" Instead of launching into a 15-minute justification of your decision-making process, consider, "It was the right opportunity at the right time, and I knew I needed to move quickly. I understand you feel left out of the process, and in the future, I'll try to keep you more informed. But this was the right decision for me, and ultimately for us." This response acknowledges her feelings without apologizing for the decision itself. It maintains your position while showing that you've considered her perspective. Now, there's an important distinction to make here. Stopping the cycle of over-explanation doesn't mean shutting down communication or dismissing her concerns. It means communicating with confidence and brevity rather than insecurity and excess. Some men, when they hear advice like, "Stop explaining yourself," interpret this as license to ignore their partner's input entirely. That approach creates its own problems. The goal isn't to dismiss her, it's to engage with her as an equal rather than as someone whose approval you desperately need. Real strength isn't found in domination. It's found in the quiet confidence that allows you to consider other perspectives without feeling threatened by them. It's found in the security that lets you say, "I hear you, but this is my decision," without anger or defensiveness. This shift won't happen overnight. If you've been over-explaining for years, both you and your partner have gotten used to that dynamic. When you begin to change it, there may be resistance, both from her and from your own ingrained habits. She might push harder for explanations, unconsciously testing to see if this new boundary is real or if you'll eventually cave and return to the old pattern. Stay steady. Respond with brief, clear statements rather than lengthy justifications. Over time, she'll adjust to this new dynamic, and you'll likely find that her respect for your decisions increases as your need to explain them decreases. And here's the truth that might be hard to hear. If she never adjusts, if she can't respect your decisions without exhaustive justification, then the problem might go deeper than communication patterns. It might be about control, trust, or fundamental incompatibility. But most of the time, when men stop over-explaining, their partners respond positively to this display of quiet confidence. So, what's the takeaway here? Stop explaining yourself doesn't mean stop communicating. It means communicate with confidence rather than insecurity. Make your decisions thoughtfully, consider her perspective genuinely, but don't fall into the trap of thinking that the right explanation will finally make her understand and approve. State your position clearly, acknowledge her feelings, and then hold steady without becoming defensive. That's the kind of strength that earns respect, not just from her, but from yourself. When you break the cycle of over-explanation, you reclaim your confidence and transform the dynamic of your relationship. You move from seeking approval to providing leadership. You shift from justifying your existence to living with conviction. And that's when something remarkable happens. The constant questioning begins to fade. The need for approval diminishes. And the relationship finds a new equilibrium, one based on mutual respect rather than constant justification. So next time you feel yourself launching into an explanation, pause, take a breath, and remember, your decisions don't need her approval to be valid. They just need to be made with integrity, communicated with clarity, and maintained with conviction. That's how you stop explaining yourself.